Hi, my name's Nancy and welcome to my art studio. Today we're going to talk about acrylic painting, and I would like to show you all the things that are necessary to get started when you're learning how to do acrylic painting. This is an example of an acrylic painting. As you can see, the colors are bold and bright, and acrylic paints are wonderful because they offer a lot of versatility in how you use them. They can be done really thick like impasto, but they can also be done really thin like a watercolor. If you've never painted before, this is a wonderful medium to start with. Now I'd like to talk about what it is that you need to get started for acrylic painting. You don't have to spend a lot of money for your supplies when you're painting. You can start with just your basic pad of paper. This is an acrylic pad. This paper comes in a 12 by 12 size, which makes it a little more difficult to mat or frame, but it has a really nice texture and finish. You can also just buy straight watercolor paper. Watercolor paper comes in hot press, cold press, comes in various weights, 140 pounds or higher. The more weight that the paper is, the better the water will absorb into the paper from the paint. You can also paint on a mat board or a canvas. In fact, you can paint on just about anything with acrylics, because acrylics will stick to anything that you paint. But one of the things that you might want to do first before you start painting is to put on a coat of this stuff here called gesso. Gesso is like a primer. When you're painting a wall, you have to put a primer on first, so you put gesso on first. And then when you use your paints after, the paint will stick to whatever surface that you're painting on. Next thing that you'll need is something to put your paint on. I use just simple paper plates. They're cheap, and you can also use a styrofoam plate. You can also buy a pad of what we call palette paper. It looks like this on the outside. It will say palette paper, and then there's individual sheets inside that have a waxy feel to them, like a piece of wax paper. Just rip these off, put your paint on here, and when you're done, you can throw your paint away. There are other kinds of palettes that can be bought where you can put the paint on the palette and then you can scrape the paint off a few days later, because acrylic paint is a polymer. So it dries very quickly, and it dries so it feels like a piece of plastic. Makes it easy to peel off. In addition to those things, you're going to need something to put your water in. You can use something as simple as just a plain water bucket like this. This was an old Cool Whip container. Or you can buy one of these acrylic water containers. These are really nice because if you look on the inside, you'll see that they have ribs on the bottom, and that allows you to clean your brushes as you go along. One of the things you need to remember with acrylic brushes and acrylic paint is that they need to stay moist when you're not using them, or they'll dry on your brushes and it'll be very difficult to get that paint off after. You will also need brushes. Here's a nice variety of brushes that I use when I paint with acrylics. Brushes for acrylics need to be pretty sturdy because the paint is hard on the bristles themselves. I don't recommend that you use watercolor brushes at all for acrylics. These are stiff and they come in various sizes, and we can get into that more in depth in terms of all the kinds of sizes of brushes that you can get. But there are small brushes, medium, large. You can get brushes that come in a shape such as this, a fan brush, which is great for making trees or bushes. You can also use acrylics with what we call a palette knife. And a palette knife puts the paint on in various ways and creates texture and style on your painting that you would not be able to get from a regular paintbrush. The last thing about acrylic painting is that you need some paint. You don't need to go out and buy a set of paints and have 20 paints, even though the colors for acrylics are just amazing. There are so many beautiful colors. If you start with your three basic primary colors, red and yellow and blue, you can take those and work with just those if you wanted to, and you still could create quite a bit of colors with those. We all know that if you mix red, yellow, and blue in a variety of ways, you will get what we call secondary colors. Your green, your purple, and your orange. If you have just these 6 tubes of paint, now you have quite a variety of paint colors that you can make. I also highly recommend that you buy a tube of white and a tube of black to start painting. Paint can come in a variety of ways. It can come in a tube like this. It can come in a jar like this. It can also come in tall bottles. It can come in small bottles. There are lots and lots of brand names for paint. There are student paints that are less expensive, will get the job done, all the way up to professional paints, which tend to cost a little more but have a higher quality. So these things that you see right here, this will get you started. All you need is the ability to want to paint. You don't have to be a great artist to start painting. You just need to have the desire to want to be able to create something. And mostly, you want to have the desire to have fun with your painting. So, I hope this has been a helpful tutorial on how to get started on your acrylic painting. We'll talk to you later about some other things in our next session. Thank you.